Okay. I'd like to have a conversation with you. This is a message for the Christians in District 5 in Oklahoma. I want to convince you to vote for me and give you the reasons why you should vote for me. But first, I think that you should know my honest feelings about religion and the universe. At this point, ordinarily, a politician is supposed to claim, oh, I'm a good, hearty Christian, and I go to church every day or every week, and I do all kinds of good things. And I can claim that I'm a Christian, but not in the ordinary sense of today's Christian. I've got some notes here that I'll glance at every once in a while. The closest description of my thoughts about Jesus were made heretical in 325 at the Council of Nicaea. I would be considered part of the Arian heresy, which in general thought that Jesus was a good man, a good rabbi, and a wise man, but he was not divine. Back in those days of Roman occupation, they were making divinities all over the place. And the people who, like St. Paul, knew that in order to get more people to believe, they had to make him into a god. Anyway, so there we are. Now, there are three reasons that I can't accept the Nicene Creed. The first is the idea of human sacrifice. Human sacrifice has been around for a while. In the old days, they used to take children and put them under posts. And wasn't it Agamemnon, before he went off to the Trojan War, he had to sacrifice his daughter or something like that. I don't know where this notion of sacrificing people came from. Probably some witch doctor thought it up. But I don't think that human sacrifice is a good notion. I remember when I was about 8 years old or so, I lived in Detroit, and our family went over to Jackson Park in Windsor, Ontario, across the river, and we saw a play, Brigadoon. Brigadoon, the play Brigadoon, it's about a little Scottish town called Brigadoon, and the people there awaken for one day every 100 years. And this was arranged by their minister, because he saw all the trouble in the world and the trouble that was coming. And he thought that his people, if they awoke for one day every 100 years, they could escape all the trouble in the world. But the minister was not allowed to stay in Brigadoon. He had to go out into the troubled world. And I asked my mother, why couldn't the minister stay? And she said, you can't have a miracle without a sacrifice. And this idea of sacrifice has plagued me. But what I think the real human meaning of it is that you have to pay for things, that we live in a world of scarcity, and you have to sacrifice time that you could be spending loafing around, and you have to work. You have to take the resources of the earth and to make them into the food you eat and the shelter you build and the clothes you wear. And so I think somehow the notion of sacrifice is tied to this basic human understanding that, by God, I gotta go to work today. And in some sense, that's considered a sacrifice, because all you've got is time. And how you use it is so important. So there we go with the first one. I can't get around the idea of human sacrifice. Now, the second reason is that I can't get my head around the idea of vicarious atonement. Vicarious atonement meaning that Jesus died for your sins. I hold to the idea that you have to pay for your own sins. That there's a song, you gotta walk that lonesome valley, you gotta walk it by yourself, ain't nobody can walk it for you. You've got to walk that lonesome valley by yourself. Now, this idea of vicarious atonement has been around a long time. The ancient Hebrews used to have put all the sins of a city, one day a year they'd have a ceremony where they put all the sins of the people in the city onto a goat, a scapegoat, and would drive it out into the desert to die, be a sacrifice to the Lord or something like that. When the Greeks got a hold of this notion, they would have a couple of prisoners, human prisoners, and they would be the scapegoats for the sins of the city. The scapegoat was called the pharmakos, which is the basis of the word pharmacy. I think it may mean have some, I haven't looked it up, I need to Google it, but I think it has something to do with the idea of a cure. You're curing the city of its ills and the results, the bad feelings because of its sins. And so it's called the pharmakos. Got that from Thomas Szasz. Now, it may be comfortable to think that Jesus died for your sins, and you can believe that if you want. It's fine. I have no trouble with allowing anyone to believe. I just can't get my head around that. Now, I know about atonement because I know I'm 64 years old and I've made a lot of mistakes in my life, and at least a dozen times a day some memory of some mistake I've made or some very embarrassing moment in my life or someone I've hurt, the memory of that comes back to me, and it's just like a knife. Just like a knife. But I let it holds on for a few seconds, and I let it pass, and I say, all right, nothing I can do about it. In the Catholic faith, you confess your sins. That's supposed to be good. Here's one that just came up recently. When I was about 11 years old, my brother Johnny got a Fanner 50 cap gun for Christmas. And he was outside doing something, and my sister's boyfriend was there, John Krieger, in the living room, and I pulled out my brother's Fanner 50, and I said, look at this, and I fanned it. If the Fanner 50 at the time, it was a lot of cowboy shows on it, but it had a big hammer so that you could fan it. And I fanned it a few times, and the hammer broke off. And I was startled, and I just laid it